Hey, this is Cameron. Welcome back to the Busy Gardener channel. We're continuing our little series, Busy Gardener Travels, and today we're here at Smith Berry Barn in Oregon. We're gonna go through and look through these acres and acres of berries, show some of the highlights and how they do it in a commercial you-pick type thing. Let's get busy. The state of Oregon has pretty much the perfect growing conditions for the types of plants that grow here. They're a major exporter of different things like what you see here, these filberts, or what we often know as hazelnuts. Lots of fields are being planted with these. They're getting rid of other crops and putting in these filbert orchards because of global demand spiking. But in addition to that, the climate and the soil here lend themselves to growing all sorts of other things. Oregon is a major exporter of pears and other types of stone fruit. They also are huge on berries, and that's something that we're going to look at today. They have acres and acres as you drive along the road of berry fields, berry patches, and some of those allow you to come and pick your own type of produce. And so that's something that we're going to look at today. We're going to dive in deep, get up close and personal at a you-pick berry farm at Smith Berry Barn in Hillsboro, Oregon. One of the things I love about coming up here, Pacific Northwest, outside of Portland, Oregon, during the summertime is coming out to Smith Berry Barn. This has become an annual tradition for us, and a couple of reasons I love coming out here. One, you can't get fruit that's more ripe or tasty than when you pluck it straight off the vine or the tree when it's ripe. That's one huge reason. You get stuff that has totally got its sugars up, it's totally got flavor built in, and that's amazing. Another reason I love coming here is that they have acres and acres of different types of berries. Boysenberries and blueberries and currants and blackberries, tons of types of blackberries, strawberries like you see planted here behind me. And look at these beautiful currants that are right here. Red currants, I mean, every one of these trees and shrubs, bushes is totally loaded with fruit. So that's a lot of fun. Another reason I like coming here specifically is to see how some of these commercial growers are doing stuff. Gives me ideas when I go back home. You know, they make their livelihood on their plants being successful, and so it's helpful to see how they've planted their blueberries, how they planted their blackberries, boysenberries, heck, even their strawberries. And so Smith Berry Barn is a real treat. It's always fun to go home and see what Michelle's going to cook out of it, though. Is she going to make a pie this time, or a crumble, or maybe we'll smash up some blackberries and put them on some ice cream? But you really can't beat this type of experience. Smith Berry Barn is what is referred to as a you-pick operation. And so what that means is that you come out and pick it. You get a bucket at the front and you come out here and you pick whatever berries you want. They have a sign at the front that lets you know what is ripe, what's ready to be picked, and you just go through and you pick what you want. You go to the front and you pay for it. And so you end up paying up because you're doing the labor, if this could even be called that, but you end up getting really affordable prices too, for like I don't know, $2.50, $3, $3.50 a pound, I think, which is really exceptional for fresh, beautiful berries like this. That's different from a commercial type orchard or you know, like a berry patch where they're coming through. They want a bunch of berries to ripen up right away, so that way their guys can come through, just take the berries straight off, send them to market, and be done with it and get ready for next year's harvest. So a little bit different situation here when you're dealing with a you-pick than when you're dealing with a commercial grower who's strictly growing for market. All at one time, I don't mean a farmer's market who they want to show up week after week. I'm talking about those who are going to send off and distribute throughout the entire country. They want to come in, pick all of their stuff at once, and send it on its way. Something that one of the people inside there told me about Smith Berry Barn is that they don't use any type of pesticides. They have natural things that they use. They'll bring out ladybugs if they need to, or some of these other more natural things, but they don't actually come through here and spray everything. And I was really amazed by that because, as you could see, there's so much harvest out there. I thought they'd certainly have pests, but it sounds like it's not been a big issue for them, thankfully. So it's interesting how the boysenberries, as you're just, so many of them are ripe. I mean, you've got these, it's impossible to not find a ripe one over here. I don't think as many people have been out here today. Maybe, oh my gosh.
There's the king boysen right there.
Okay, all right, we're gonna try this boysen out. All right, let's just be clear about something. That thing is as big as my thumb. Look at it. So they welcome you at the front to try boysenberries or any of the berries to see if they're ripe. So look at this thing. Jeff, that thing was juicy, it was flavorful, and it was sweet. All the things you want. These things are loaded.
There's another one. Look at it.
Yeah, these are so ripe. Look how bubbly those things are. That's how, and they popped right off, didn't they?
Oh man, let's find out how bubbly they were. If you haven't had a boysenberry, you need to have a boysenberry. Excellent.
So good. If you've ever been up to the Portland, Oregon area, you know that this place is green. And one big reason for that is because of the amount of precipitation that they get, very mild temperatures. And so stuff loves growing up here. And it's really favorable for many, many kinds of crops. It's not going to work for things like citrus or things like that. It gets a little too cold and stays a little too cold for that. But almost everything else, all of your stone fruit, it definitely gets cold enough. All of your berries, even grapes. I mean, look at these gorgeous grapes right behind me that I found here. But it's no wonder when you kind of just look at what's growing naturally on the sides of the road, it's just like everything's just teeming with life. And you can tell the plants are just really, really happy up here, as opposed to Southern California, San Gabriel Valley, which is much more shrubby, not quite deserty, but right on the brink of that. Come up here and it's like a green wonderland, unbelievable. It's unbelievable to me how many berries are on these plants. And I think they start, like Jeff, you were saying a second ago, people start picking once they get to the end of the row, and by the time they get to the middle, they've either like blown out their baskets or whatever the deal is.
These literally haven't been touched here.
Yeah, I've not ever been up here and seen so many berries on these trees, on these bushes. Unbelievable.
There's a boysenberry, blackberry.
And the colors are so distinct too when you have them next to each other. Boysen has like that nice wine color.
Mm-hmm. And the blackberry is a little bit more of a shinier, glossier berry.
Here, one thing that they have, it's kind of like a gigantic version, as you can see, acres and acres of these different berries, kind of like the successive ripening idea that we have in like a backyard orchard. Same kind of idea goes in one of these you-pick places, where they have different types of blackberries, for example, 8 different types of blackberries, and they have some that are ripe right now, but they also have some that are going to ripen up. So for example, like right now, they've got a number of different blackberries, but they're triple crown, which is also what I'm growing in my orchard, are up there, and those will be ready probably in 3 or 4 weeks. And so when you've got an operation like this, where you've got people coming in over time, you want people to be able to continue to come back, find berries that are ripe, rather than having 20 acres of one type of berry that's just right all at one time. It's interesting how those same principles apply in a commercial thing like this. To reiterate, this has really inspired the way that I do my trellising at home. I got the idea last year. I said, how are they doing these where the berries are so easy to pick? And what they do is they have essentially the canes coming straight up, and then they've got the branches that either go that way or that way, and there's a trellis wire up there, and all they do is wrap the canes or the vines around the trellis wire. And you'll see there's a whole bunch of them. They don't just put one, they just wrap them all up. And at first it seems like it might be a little untidy, but look at the way that all of these berries are so accessible. This is something that we've enjoyed in my house too, is just being able to come out, see the berries all visible, without having to lift up a bunch of thorny canes or leaves or branches to get at it. And yet you see that the fruit load is just blown away. You know, it gets a lot of good sunlight, so tasty fruit. Really recommend doing a 1 or 2 line trellis system in your orchard if this is something that you're planting berries as well. Again, looking at the successive ripening, on one side we've got these boysenberries over here. We have some blackberries that we're picking on right now. But if you look over here, these are these triple crown, and these triple crown, as you can look closely, are still a few weeks out. They're just beginning to color up, but definitely a few weeks out. So we came back here in, let's say, the end of July, early August. These triple crowns up here this season would probably be ready at that time. So that successive ripening really works out if you're wanting to extend your growing harvest season even in your own orchard.
There's so many down here, Michelle. I mean, seriously.
Look at this.
Yeah. You come down here and go, Michelle, like this.
Yeah, they're
Times
huge.
two.
The
Wow. Okay, we're gonna plant ourselves here.
Because we blow off ants at home.
Ooh, that's so good.
Is it yummy? Here's a berry I don't have a lot of experience with, a tayberry. And so I'm going to try to see what actually constitutes a ripe tayberry. I know that the darker the berry, the sweeter the juice. Let's see here. Let's see if I can find one under here that looks like it's got some pretty strong coloring. Tayberry, let's see. You know, that's a very mild berry. It's very mild. It's kind of like a blackberry. Some of the overtones, but not a burst of flavor, not a burst of sweetness. Kind of a mild berry compared to blackberries or boysenberries. Not really tart, just mild. That's probably the best way to describe it. So interesting, kind of like wine tasting. When you're able to have berries right next to each other, you can really start to tell them apart, what kind of distinguishes one type from the other, and help you to find some favorites. That's one nice thing about having a few available as opposed to just buying some in the store. Cotata Black. Let's see how this tastes. Wow, very flavorful. It's not quite as tart, obviously, as like a boysen. And it's interesting, you pick these really based on color, and you're still looking for kind of those bubbly seeds. That seems to be a really good indicator too. If the seeds look really tight, it's not ready, but if they're kind of bubbly and the color's good, chances are you've got a pretty good and ripe one. It looks like some of the boysenberries made their way in here, kind of intermingled themselves. But you can tell them apart pretty easy. Get a real sense also looking at the different growth habits of some of these. I recognize this triple crown from, aside from, I don't even know if there's a sign out here. I already know it's a triple crown because there was a sign in years past. Plus I can tell that this is thornless, and it also has a very upright growth habit versus like the boysenberries, which are very brambly, trailing type cultivars, and some of these others that are on the lower trellises back here. Those are all the upper wire is probably at about 4 feet in the back ones, whereas here they're much closer to 5 feet, and you can see how tall these are as I'm walking by them. Whereas before we were picking fruit at chest level, belly button level, or below. These beautiful triple crown that are just totally loaded with fruit. This is unbelievable. Look at the berries on these things. We really don't get this kind of yield down in Southern California. You can tell why all of these trailing berries, blackberries and the like, are so comfortable up here. Also why they're an invasive species up here, because they just love to grow, they love to produce up here in the Pacific Northwest. For when they're not happening at a farm like this, or like a acreage where they want people to come out, they will just grow out in the wild all by themselves too. Very, very vigorous, very happy in this type of climate. But they're doing well for us down there. We had a bunch of fruit this year. But it just blows me away to see the yield, the amount of fruit, and the size of the fruit up here when you see it in its very preferred climate. It's very foreign to me also being up here in the Pacific Northwest because I see blackberries growing everywhere on the side of the road, behind grocery stores in an alley. And it's such a weird thing that this is so common for people who live up here. But when I come up here, I just see it as, oh my gosh, there are blackberries all over the place. A word to the wise though, if you're up in the Pacific Northwest and you see blackberries right by the side of the road, don't pick them. They come through with these trucks and they'll spray like a herbicide on them to try to keep them at bay and to try to kill them back so they don't overrun things. So if you're out in the woods, the middle of the woods somewhere, and you see some, chances are it's probably okay. But if you see them right by the side of the road, don't do it. Move on. You don't want to get some sort of poison during your berry picking excursion. I know I keep talking about the success of ripening, but behind me you still have flowering and bee activity on these berries, while some of the other berries have been ready to be picked for weeks now. So it's really interesting to see how changing up the types for a longer growing season really do play out over time. One other little plus of that too is that if pollinators are kind of continuously around, your chances of getting regular and consistent pollination are higher too. Oh my goodness, look what I found back here. Grapes, grapevines, huge also up here. The Willamette Valley is huge for grape growth, and there are tons of vineyards and wineries up here as well. Well, here I am next to some raspberry vines. Look at how tall these have gotten up here. These look like some sort of fairly thornless one. Now, you might not know what distinguishes a raspberry from a blackberry or boysenberry. And the biggest distinguisher is that when you pull a blackberry or a raspberry rather off, oh, none of these are ripe. Here we go. Here's one down here that'll come off. You may have noticed that there's a hole in there, and that's because it leaves behind what they call this little rasp that was in the middle. It looks kind of like a little file here, and that comes out of the center. Blackberries and boysenberries have that little stem remain inside the berry when you pull it off. So let me try this one. Very ripe, very sweet, very good. When it comes to berries and you're wanting to pull them off, you want it to be a very light touch. If you're having to exert any kind of force to pull it off, you're probably going to get a berry that is not quite ripe, wasn't really ready to come off. These things, when they're fruited well, they're going to slide right off. Just to try to give you a scale for how big this is, this is the beginning. I don't know if you can see them off in the distance. I'm way back here, and there's still room to go back here. Smith Berry Barn is an enormous area that has lots of acreage and gives you an ability to go through and really pick different types, so lots of different types of berries, different types of things out here. Yeah, it's so easy. I'm just walking by here. You just almost even pass by fruit. I mean, there's so much of it on everything. Here are a couple of black currants. These are black currant trees, or bushes rather. That's a weird tasting fruit, that black currant. Yeah, that's a strange fruit. I've only ever had like black currant tea or something. Yeah, these are weird. You like black currants? You've got red currants, black currants over here, and some of these clear currants I'm not familiar with. Now currants, I'm familiar with the red currants because those I've had dried, thrown on the top of like rice and things like that, very tart. Some of these other currants I've not tried before. I'm gonna taste them. Okay, first we'll do the red currants. I've never had it. Yeah, just kind of a tart little berry. The black currants. I picked some that I think were pretty ripe. That is weird. And finally I've got one of these cool, I don't know what they call them, these clear currants. They almost look like a fish egg. See the seeds inside. Yeah, that's the best of the bunch. I don't know. I don't really like currants like this. Okay, this is something that's going to put stuff in my orchard to absolute shame. Look at these blueberries. Look how healthy and tall they are. Look at how much fruit is loaded on those. My blueberries have just been beaten up and just don't do well. I mean, they grow native up here. The soil here is acidic enough. It's got a lot of pine material in it. They're building them on these berms, which I think means that they're able to amend them really, really well and keep them really happy. But these look really happy compared to my struggling blueberries. I'm going to show you some of the fruit on these things. Gorgeous. Look at these gorgeous. Let me see, that one looks pretty ripe. Look how easy that comes off. Here's another one, looks really nice and ripe. Wow, look how beautiful these are. So I got these very ripe. You know, I've never actually picked blueberries up here before. This is my first time picking off blueberries off of like a commercial farm. I've picked some off of the ones in my backyard, but let me try these out. Oh, delicious. All right, you know what that is over there? Those are some bee boxes. That is wonderful. Those come out here and are doing all the hard work, making sure that this place is loaded with fruit. Yeah, throughout the entire season. Look at that. Just I don't know much about beekeeping. I've kind of been interested in looking at that, but I'm kind of concerned that the kids will get stung in my house because I can't really plant it off site far enough. Even if we put it in the corner of the orchard, that's only maybe 50 feet from everything else. So I don't know. Maybe you've got some ideas on that you can put in the comments. It's interesting that even though this is all for a commercial purpose, that these are all pruned really so that nobody's going to have to get on a ladder in order to pick this and to harvest these apples. Right there, everything is at no higher than really anybody can reach. You won't even have to get on a step stool to reach these things. And so it's interesting. I've seen more and more growers up here as I've been coming up here over the years doing high density planting, lower, just like this, lower scaffold, because the days of sending people up on a ladder or coming through with big machines is kind of gone. It's a lot faster, more efficient to just come through and be able to reach the fruit from a really convenient level. Right now we're in the Marionberry patch here. And see, these look a lot like blackberries. Ow! They're all as thorny as blackberries too. Marionberry, maybe you've just had this in a pie or an ice cream or something. It looks an awful lot like a blackberry. It tastes an awful lot like a blackberry too. I wonder what makes a Marionberry, although it has an interesting aftertaste. It's weird, the aftertaste almost tastes oaty or nutty. Interesting, I'm gonna try another one and see. Oh, you ate that one's not ripe at all. The blacker the better, the redder the worse.
No.
You got so many of those. Is that all Marionberries?
Yeah.
What are you gonna make with it?
Pie, and then some jam.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's nice because you
That's
can enjoy
what
it
we're
after
all
the
gonna
season's
do.
Right,
done,
right, right.
I'm gonna make a blueberry.
Yeah, I'm gonna try another Marionberry. This one looks also really ripe. I'm gonna see if this tastes any different than the first. Yeah, a bit more sweetness. I don't know, this reminds me a little bit of boysenberries in that the flavor can be hit or miss depending on how you've got to almost get a really ripe one for it to taste decent. Let me see, I'll try this one. This one, like, by blackberry standards, ought to be ready. A good berry, reminds me a little bit of a boysenberry. So those little individual things I call bubbles, they're called drupelets. I didn't know that. They're drupelets hold each of the individual seeds of the berry. So when you see that blackberry made up of all those different things or the raspberry made up of all those different little bubbles, those are drupelets. Now you know. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of The Busy Gardener, this Busy Gardener travels, seeing things done in a different way. Actually, a lot of you probably live in climates that can grow these types of things. So maybe this has given you some ideas on what you might plant or might do differently in your orchard. This is a real treat, coming out here, leaving home with several pounds of berries. It's amazing how many, your bucket just fills up because you just can't even pass a bush without just wanting to pick some of these amazing berries as you go along and go, oh, there's a ripe one, there's a ripe one, there's a ripe one. The next thing you know, each kid has a bucket full of 3 pounds of berries. Anyway, this has been sure a lot of fun. I'm gonna go through and try to pick some berries myself. We'll see what we end up making out of it. And yeah, love for you to subscribe if that's your thing. If that's not your thing, that's okay too. Hope we've earned your subscription. Be sure to like below. I'd love to hear your comments. What thoughts do you have? What memories do you have of going through and visiting maybe a U-pick orchard or type of berry patch? Give me some ideas for next time I'm up here. Anyway, whether you've got one tree in your orchard or a bunch of berry bushes, until next time, stay busy.